So I'd now like to talk briefly about someone who decided to dedicate his life to challenging the status quo. I travelled to Tara with a crew from Newcastle, and while we were there we received the sad news that Pete Gray had died. He'd been battling cancer for over 2 years and he was only 30. Late last year, Pete achieved global notoriety for symbolically throwing his shoes at John Howard when he was appearing on ABC's Q&A. As he threw his shoes, he said, "That's for the Iraqi dead, and this is for the Iraqi living." His girlfriend was there too, and she cried out that Howard has blood on his hands, and I think these are sentiments that probably most of us in this room would share. Pete spoke to the ABC the next day to explain why he did what he did, and he said, "I did it so that there was a chance that thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in the rest of the world, and particularly in the Middle East, could see that not every Australian was behind the decision to invade and rule the country of Iraq." Howard shrugged off the incident. However, Prime Minister Julia Gillard told media that she felt it was disrespectful and wrong, and I'm sure these are sentiments that Pete would have no doubt used to describe Howard's war, the war that's now killed over 100,000 Iraqis. Well, the shoe-throwing incident was what earned Gray his acclaim as a gutsy anti-war activist. To his community and to his friends, Pete was more than just the guy who threw shoes at John Howard. He was a committed and passionate activist, and he spent the last 10 years of his life campaigning tirelessly across a range of social justice and environmental campaigns. He was an integral member of Newcastle climate direct action group Rising Tide. Rising Tide issued a statement in tribute to their friend, and they said he believed in justice and fighting for what's right, whatever way that he could. They said that if that meant writing a letter, he'd write the letter, and if that meant putting himself in front of a coal ship, then that's what he'd do. If he saw a way to make a meaningful difference to an issue, he'd take it. While our politicians continue to fight over a carbon price in Canberra, there's people like Pete who are actually out there doing what they think needs to be done to make a difference. It was Pete who was behind the idea for the annual People's Blockade of the world's largest coal port in Newcastle, an event that many of us have been to where people take to the harbour and stop the movement of coal ships in and out of the harbour for the day. In 2006, Pete won a landmark ruling in the New South Wales Land and Environment Court, requiring the climate change impacts of burning coal to be considered in the environmental assessment of coal mines. In a video interview filmed during Climate Camp 2008, where Pete was amongst a group of activists that were arrested during an action that stopped a coal train, he said that he hoped he'd be able to look all those who came after him in the eye and tell them that he'd done his darndest to make the world a better place. He said that he'd had a great day. He said he couldn't think of a time when he'd had a better day. He got fined $400 that day, and he said that it cost $400 to get arrested, but that stopping dangerous runaway climate change was priceless. However it is that people came to know of Pete, the memory that he leaves behind is unlike one that will be left behind by our so-called leaders. In throwing his shoes at John Howard, Pete was demanding better from those who are meant to represent us. While Howard's legacy is irreversibly marred by war and by conflict, Pete's is one of peaceful commitment to creating a more just world.